10 moments. That's all it took to turn the most likable man in the biggest band on earth into the one person everybody in that room wanted away from them. Engineers walked out, bandmates quit. His best friend wrote a song about how he was finished and got another Beatle to play on it. You know the smile, the thumbs up, the cute one. This is the other file. And it starts the week they lost the only man who could tell him no. 10. The nicest man in the band walks out.
To make it better.
22nd of August, 1968. Same building, same album. 7 in the evening. Session runs till 4:45 in the morning. And somewhere in the middle of it, the drummer goes. Ringo Starr, 6 years, almost to the day, since his first show with them. He gets up, he leaves, and he tells them he's out of the band. You already know Ringo's reputation. The easy one. The one who absorbed the tension and stayed cheerful. The glue when the other three started splintering. If Ringo cracks, the pressure in that room is not normal pressure. So what cracked him? Partly the atmosphere generally.
And anytime you feel the pain.
He later admitted the sessions had moments of real turmoil, and he'd been feeling left out in the cold, but the reported trigger was more specific and more painful than that. It was Paul picking at his drumming, a tom-tom fill, a note about how it ought to go. One correction too many from a man who could sit down and play the part himself, and they both knew it. Paul admitted years later, in Anthology, that Ringo was always slightly paranoid he wasn't a great drummer, partly because he never soloed, and that they simply never thought to tell him he was their favorite.
Take a sad song and make it.
So Ringo walked, went off on holiday, ended up on Peter Sellers' yacht in Sardinia, where, as the story goes, he wrote Octopus's Garden. Now here's the twist that makes this hurt. They didn't stop. Ringo leaves, and the three of them stay and cut the track anyway. Ken Scott, the engineer that night, remembered Paul behind the kit, George on lead guitar, John on bass, 5 takes of the basic track. That song is back in the USSR. Then they did Dear Prudence, track 1 and track 2 of the White Album. The first thing you hear when the needle drops on that record, and the drummer isn't the drummer. If that album was in your house growing up, or in the pile in your older brother's room you weren't supposed to touch. You've heard those two songs 1,000 times, and you were listening to a man playing over the empty chair of the friend he'd just driven out of the building. They send a telegram. They tell him he's the best rock and roll drummer in the world. He comes back on the 3rd of September to find Mal Evans has covered Studio 2 in flowers, all over the kit. Welcome back, Ringo. Lovely gesture, real affection. Nobody's faking it. But think about the maths. It took a walkout, 13 days of silence in a florist's van before anyone in that band said the words out loud. That's the thing about being run by a perfectionist. It's not that he thinks you're bad, it's that it never once occurs to him to tell you you're good. 9. I'll play whatever you want me to play.
Hanging over me, oh, yesterday.
January 1969, Twickenham Film Studios. A freezing cold, cavernous soundstage in the middle of an English winter. Cameras rolling from breakfast onwards. A band trying to rehearse an album in public.
And yesterday.
Whose idea was it? Paul's. He'd caught the bug filming the promo clips for Hey Jude and Revolution in front of an audience, first time they'd played to real people since 1966.
Love was such an easy game to play.
And he wanted them back on a stage. He wanted them to be a band again. Nobody else wanted to be there.
Oh, I believe in yesterday.
George later described walking back into a winter of discontent with the Beatles and called it unhealthy and unhappy. It wasn't a studio, and it wasn't a set. It was half of each, and comfortable for nobody.
Half the man I used to be. Does a shadow.
6th of January. They're working on Two of Us. Paul is coaching George through his guitar part. And George, quietly, no shouting, which is somehow far worse, tells him he'll play whatever Paul wants him to play.
Came suddenly. Why she?
Or he won't play at all, if that's what Paul would prefer. Whatever pleases him, he'll do it. It's on tape. You can watch it.
Oh, yesterday.
And what's chilling isn't the anger, because there isn't any. That's not a man having an argument. That's a man who has stopped having arguments.
Now it looks as though they're here to stay.
Understand where George is by this point. He's writing at a level that produces All Things Must Pass within 18 months.
Oh, I believe in yesterday.
A triple album of songs so strong it embarrasses everything the other three released that year. He said it himself. John and Paul had been writing for so long that their songs were automatically the priority, and he'd have to wait his turn behind 10 or 15 of theirs.
Had to go, no.
4 days later, the 10th of January, it ends. There's a row at lunch, and this one is with John. I'm not going to blur that for you. But George stands up and says he thinks he'll be leaving the band now.
Oh, I believe in yesterday.
Not next week, now. Tells them to get a replacement, right into the NME, get a few people in. And on his way out the door, the driest exit line in rock history, see you round the clubs.
Half the man I used to be. Does a shadow.
So let me be straight with you about the blame here, because it matters. The explosion on the 10th was with Lennon. The slow bleed that made the explosion inevitable was with McCartney.
He wouldn't say. I say.
If you've ever worked under somebody genuinely, provably better at the job than you, and who let you know it not by insulting you, but by correcting you, gently, endlessly, for years, you already know which of those two things does the permanent damage.
Now I need a place to hide away.
Insults you can fight. Corrections just wear the enamel off. They got him back. Part of the peace deal was moving out of Twickenham, and George brought in Billy Preston, which instantly cooled the room down. You can hear it on Get Back and Don't Let Me Down.
Half the man I used to be. Does a shadow.
John liked it so much he floated making Preston a full member. Paul shot that down. 4 was bad enough.
Oh, I believe in yesterday.
Let's look at the numbers. Only 9% of you are actually subscribed. Honestly, that's tough to see. Our team spends days hunting down archives and verifying every single fact just to tell these stories right. If you've made it this far into the video, you're clearly part of the community, so please hit subscribe. It costs nothing and helps us immensely. Now, for those already subscribed, very few of you have made the jump to our membership, and that's a hard pill to swallow because you're the ones who know our value best. If this channel has moved you or inspired you, consider joining. It's the price of one coffee, but it's the literal fuel for this channel. Let's keep this alive together. Back to the story.
8. 4 sessions for one song.
Dream waits at the window, wearing the face that she keeps.
July and August, 1969. Abbey Road. The record everyone agrees is a miracle.
What does he care? All alone.
The last time all 4 of them stood in a studio and made something whole. Underneath that miracle, Maxwell's silver hammer.
Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice.
Paul brings in this bouncy little music hall number about a medical student called Maxwell Edison who murders people with a hammer.
All the lonely people Where do
He got the idea partly from an avant-garde French playwright of all things. That's where the word pataphysical in the lyric comes from, and he wants it right.
it's in a jar by the door? Who is it for?
4 recording sessions across July and August, 16 takes of the rhythm track alone before they even start overdubbing. Then piano, then Hammond organ, then guitars, then Mal Evans hitting an actual anvil.
In a church where a wedding has been. Lives in a
Then, on the 6th of August, Paul goes back and adds a Moog synthesizer solo. 4 sessions, for a band that used to knock out an entire album in a single day.
come from. All the lonely people.
John Lennon doesn't play on it, at all. Not one note on the finished record. He'd been in a car crash in Scotland and was recovering. That part's true.
The dead from his hands as he walks from the grave.
And Yoko was in the studio on a bed because she'd come off worse than he had. But John was also finished with it.
Dream waits at the window, wearing the face that she keeps.
In Jeff Emmerich's account, he dismissed it as more of Paul's granny music. Later, John said he was ill while they cut most of it, and that it ground George and Ringo into the ground.
What does he care? All alone.
In 1980, he was blunter, said he hated it, said all he remembers is the track, said Paul made them do it 100 million times.
Ah, look at all the lonely people.
And that Paul did everything he could to turn it into a single, and it never was and never could have been.
Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice.
George's verdict. Sometimes Paul would make them do these really fruity songs. He said they eventually did a good job on it, but that when Paul got an arrangement fixed in his head, that was that. And Ringo.
In a church where a wedding has been. Lives in a
Sweet-natured Ringo, who takes a swing at practically nobody, told Rolling Stone in 2008 it was the worst session ever, the worst track they ever had to record. 3 out of 4 men in the greatest band that has ever existed, still angry, 40 years later, about a 3-minute song.
It's in a jar by the door. Who is it for?
Now, I've got a soft spot here. I don't think Maxwell is the crime everybody says it is. A cheerful sing-along tune wrapped around a pitch-black lyric about a serial killer is a real trick, and he pulled it off.
Father Mackenzie writing the words to a sermon that no.
I'd take it over a couple of the sacred cows on that record, but that's not the point. The point is that Paul stood in that room and asked 3 grown men who had stopped loving each other to give him take after take after take of a song they despised, and he genuinely could not hear that he was asking them for something they no longer had to give.
In a church where a wedding has been. Lives in a
That's the loneliest kind of talent, when your standards outlive the friendships that made the standards possible in the first place.
lonely people.
7. Outvoted 3-1.
But though they may be parted,
Epstein is gone. Apple is hemorrhaging money in every direction. A boutique that lost a fortune. A building full of people on salaries nobody could account for. They need a manager, and they need one fast. John, George, and Ringo want Allen Klein. Hard New York operator, managed Sam Cooke early on, managed the Rolling Stones, made no apologies to anyone for anything.
Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words.
Paul wants Lee Eastman and John Eastman, who are his girlfriend's father and his girlfriend's brother, Linda's family, soon to be his in-laws. He gets outvoted 3-1.
Broken-hearted people living in the world agree.
Now put yourself on the other side of that table for a second, because this is where the case against Paul stops being about bossiness and starts being about something uglier. From where John and George and Ringo are sitting, the baby-faced one has just tried to hand the keys of the family firm to his fiance's dad.
Let it be. And when the
That's not a business disagreement. That's a power grab in a nice suit. They try to compromise for a while, Klein managing Apple and the 3 of them, Eastman as corporate counsel handling Paul. It collapsed.
there will be an answer, let it be.
There was a meeting, it got ugly, and Eastman was out. And here's what makes the whole thing unwinnable. Paul was right. He said it plainly years later. They loved Klein, and he thought Klein was an idiot. And he knew that if he managed to save it, he'd be saving it for them too, because they were about to give it away. And I'll be fair, because the story's more complicated than the hero version. Klein cut some genuinely good deals. They made more money during his short tenure than they'd made in all the Epstein years. But being right doesn't rescue you when the vote's already gone against you 3-1. Being right just makes you unbearable. You know how that goes. Everybody in the room has decided, and you're the one voice still talking, and every extra second you keep making the case, you become less of a colleague and more of a problem to be managed.
There is still a light that shines on me.
5. The interview he gave himself.
Only waiting for this moment to rise.
10th of April, 1970. A press pack goes out with his solo album, and inside it, Paul McCartney has interviewed himself.
Blackbird fly.
Questions and answers, both sides, his own hand. One question in that pack: does he see Lennon-McCartney becoming an active songwriting partnership again? Answer: no. One word.
Take these broken wings and learn to fly.
That's the moment. Front pages on every continent. Paul quits. Beatles finished. The dream's over.
Blackbird fly.
The band's own publicist, Derek Taylor, was so buried in phone calls, he had to put out a statement of his own the same day.
Into the light of a dark black night.
A beautiful, sad little thing about the world still spinning and how the time to worry would be when it stopped. The Beatles had already broken up.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night.
John walked into a room in September 1969 and told the other three he was leaving. 7 months earlier. Paul's description of it is almost unbearable. John came in, said he was leaving, and said it was quite thrilling, rather like a divorce. And then the rest of them were left picking up the pieces.
Blackbird fly.
So why didn't anybody know? Because Klein was mid-negotiation, and Klein wanted it kept quiet until his deals were tied off. So they sat on it.
All your life you were
4 men pretending in public for over half a year that a corpse was still breathing. Paul's own words about that stretch. They all knew it was the end, but they couldn't just walk away, so for a few months they had to pretend.
You were only waiting for this moment to arise.
4. New Year's Eve, 1970. Last day of the year, London, the High Court of Justice. Paul McCartney files suit against John Lennon, George Harrison, Ringo Starr, and Apple Corps, asking the court to dissolve the partnership. He asks for a receiver to be appointed to run Apple until it's settled. He asks for a full accounting of everything and a 4-way split. He sued the Beatles. It still sounds obscene, 50-odd years later, and his own description of what that felt like is the saddest thing in this entire story.
Back to where you once belonged.
The fabbest of groups, the nicest of people, his truest friends from way back, his firmest enemies, overnight. He'd been in that band since he was a child. It was his school, his family, his whole life. He said he told his lawyer he couldn't do it, and his lawyer told him there was no other way. He held off for months. He said the only way to get at Klein was to sue them, and he called it unconscionable, something he'd never in his life have thought of doing. Because as long as that partnership existed, Klein got paid off Paul's solo work too. Somebody sent him a remixed version of one of his own songs, The Long and Winding Road, a simple piano ballad, now with harps, horns, an orchestra, and a women's choir bolted onto it by Phil Spector. Nobody asked him. Nobody played it to him first. It arrived at his house with a note from Klein saying the changes were necessary. Paul wrote back demanding it be reduced or undone, and finished with 4 words, "Don't do it again." They released it anyway.
Get back, George!
That's a man watching strangers redecorate the inside of his own head and being informed he doesn't get a vote.
I thought she was a woman, but she was another man.
The case opened in the Chancery Division on the 19th of January 1971, adjourned, reopened the 19th of February, ran to the 12th of March, and on that February day, when it reopened, Paul was the only Beatle in the building.
Get back to where you want.
Meanwhile, back on that New Year's Eve when the papers were filed, Ringo threw a party at Ronnie Scott's. Clapton was there, Charlie Watts was there, Klaus Voormann, Maurice Gibb, Georgie Fame. They jammed into the small hours.
Get back to where you once belonged.
2 different worlds, same night. One of them in a courtroom, everybody else at the party.
Get back.
3. The critical execution. May 1971. Ram. Paul and Linda, sheep on the cover, a Scottish farm, homemade and happy and completely out of step with the times. The critics take it out behind the building. Rolling Stone, John Landau, July the 8th, 1971. He opens by calling the record the nadir in the decomposition of 60s rock so far. He says that at least you could feel something about Dylan's self-portrait, even if it was regret. But Ram is so inconsequential and so irrelevant that you can't even summon the energy to hate it. Then he twists the blade. He argues that Lennon had been the one holding the reins on Paul's florid, cutesy pie instincts all those years, and now there was nobody left to do it. Playboy said he was substituting facility for substance, and compared listening to it to watching a man juggle 5 guitars. Technically impressive, but you keep wondering why he bothers. Robert Christgau, in The Village Voice, called it a bad record and a classic mismatch of form and content. And then the one that actually draws blood, Ringo, publicly, in print, said he didn't think there was a single tune on it, said he felt Paul had wasted his time, said he seemed to be going strange. That's not a critic in an office in New York. That's the drummer.
When I get to the bottom, I go back to the top of the slide, and I stop and
Then it gets genuinely surreal. A radical named A.J. Weberman, from something calling itself the Rock Liberation Front, was so offended by a record that said nothing about what was happening on the street that he staged a mock funeral, a public burial of Paul McCartney as a representative of youth culture. They held a funeral for a living man because they didn't like his album about sheep. It keeps going. Wildlife arrives in December 1971 and gets dismissed as lightweight. February 1972, he releases an actual protest single, Give Ireland Back to the Irish, written straight after Bloody Sunday, and the BBC bans it outright. It still went to #1 in Ireland and Spain, but at home he couldn't get it played. And then in May, the next single is his arrangement of Mary Had a Little Lamb, and the music press decides he has completely lost his mind. The Enemy assumed it was a sarcastic reply to the ban. It wasn't. He'd written it before, for his kids, and there's a demo of it on tape from December 1971 that proves it. Didn't matter. The story was better than the truth.
But don't you want me to make you?
2. How Do You Sleep?
It's a steady job, but he wants to be a paperback writer.
9th of September, 1971, the same album that gave the world the most played peace anthem in human history, also contains a 5.5-minute character assassination of Paul McCartney. How Do You Sleep?
Paperback writer.
John felt got at by Ram, and he wasn't imagining it. Paul admitted, eventually, that a line about too many people preaching was a dig at John and Yoko. And that a line about somebody taking their lucky break and breaking it in two was aimed there as well. John read the whole album as a coded attack. He pointed at too many people, at three legs, at Dear Boy, at the back seat of my car. Paul said no to most of those. John didn't believe him. There was also a photo on the back sleeve of Ram of two Beatles going at it, which, well, you can read that one yourself. So John answered with an atomic weapon. He mocks the Paul is dead rumor outright, says the freaks were right. He tells him the only thing he ever did was yesterday, and that since he left, he's just another day. One Beatles song and one solo single, used as the complete evidence that the man is finished. John even publicly thanked Klein for handing him that line. The album shipped with a postcard tucked inside, John holding a pig by the ears. A straight parody of the Ram sleeve, but none of that is the part. Here's the part. The slide guitar solo on How Do You Sleep is played by George Harrison, two of them, on the same record, aimed at the third. They cut it on the 26th of May, 1971, at John's home studio at Tittenhurst Park, days after Ram came out. Klaus Voormann on bass, Nicky Hopkins on piano, Alan White on drums. Everybody in that room knew exactly who the song was about, and George picked up his guitar and played on it anyway. One, he believed it too. Number one isn't a session. It isn't a lawsuit. It isn't a review. It's the 50 years he spent agreeing with them. Paul went up to the farm in Scotland and came apart. His own words. He was going crazy. He drank too much. He did too much of everything. No band, no job, no name worth having, and a wife and small children watching him unravel in a farmhouse in Kintyre. And then in 2020, at 78 years old, decades into being a knight of the realm and the most celebrated living songwriter on earth, he said the thing out loud that recasts this entire list. He said he was thought of as the guy who broke up the Beatles and the guy who sued his mates, and that he bought into it, that it was so prevalent, for years, he almost blamed himself. Read that again. He almost blamed himself. 50 years of the most gifted popular songwriter in history, walking around inside a story he knew wasn't true and had somehow lost the ability to disprove. And the wound never sealed over. Watch what happens in 2002, 32 years after the split. He puts out a live album and flips the credits on 19 songs to read Paul McCartney and John Lennon instead of Lennon-McCartney.
I'll get you anything, my friend, if it makes you feel all.
His reasoning was that Yoko had dropped his co-writing credit from Give Peace a Chance on a 1997 compilation, and that he'd already used the reversed credit on Wings Over America back in 1976, and John had never said a word about it. Didn't matter. Ono's camp accused him of trying to rewrite history and threatened legal action. And Ringo said he found it underhanded, 32 years on, and the drummer is still reaching for that kind of word about him.
I don't care too much for money. Money can
That's not a man protecting royalties. That's a man who has been called a thief for so long that he started counting the silverware in public.
pay you love it too. I may not have a lot to give.
And then comes the ending nobody wrote for him. He was right about Klein. The lawsuit he was crucified for is the reason those recordings weren't signed away. Paul has said the anthology, the archives, Peter Jackson's footage, none of it could have happened without that court case.
No, 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 no.
And he said the others thanked him for it. Years later, he made peace with Yoko too, said time was the great healer, and that if John loved her, there had to be something there, because John wasn't stupid. Part of what got him there was George, who told him he didn't want stuff like that hanging around in his life. He's 84 now, still writing, still recording, still walking out in front of stadiums and playing Now and Then, alongside footage of a man who once told the world he was finished. He outlived the verdict.
I don't care too much for money. Money